Is that a new Mercedes? I stood in my driveway staring at my sister Laura as she stepped out of a gleaming black SUV that probably cost more than my annual salary. Just last week, she'd told me she was still too financially stretched to start repaying the money she'd borrowed. Oh, this? Laura ran her hand along the car's pristine hood. Just got it yesterday. Great lease deal. You wouldn't believe the features it has. My name is Rachel Sullivan, and at 32, I was watching my sister flaunt a luxury car while the $45,000 I'd lent her a year ago sat unpaid. Money that had come from my house down payment fund. Money I'd saved over years of careful budgeting and overtime work at my graphic design firm. I thought you were in financial trouble, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. That's why you needed to borrow money, remember? To avoid bankruptcy? Laura waved her hand dismissively. I still am. This is different. It's just a lease. Besides, I needed something reliable for work. I remembered the day she'd shown up at my door in tears, mascara running down her face, how she'd sobbed about mounting credit card debt, about possibly losing her house, about needing help, just this once. I'd written the check that same day, draining most of my savings because that's what sisters do. They help each other. Your old car was only 3 years old, I pointed out, and you promised to start repaying me after 6 months. Don't be so uptight, Rachel. You're doing fine. You've always been good with money. It's not like you really need it right now anyway. She pulled out her phone, checking her reflection in its screen. Oh, did I tell you I'm planning a trip to Europe this summer? You should come, though it might be a bit expensive for you. I stood there speechless. The casual way she dismissed my loan, the implicit suggestion that being good with money somehow meant I didn't deserve to be repaid, the audacity of inviting me on an expensive vacation while owing me thousands, it all hit me at once. Actually, I do need the money, I said. I'd planned to use it for a house down payment. Well, maybe this is a sign you should keep renting. Property ownership is so much responsibility. She glanced at her watch. Anyway, I can't stay. I've got a spa appointment. We should do lunch soon. As I watched her drive away in her brand new Mercedes, something inside me snapped. A year of excuses, deflections, and broken promises crystallized into a moment of clarity. My sister wasn't just bad with money. She was taking advantage of me, and I'd let her do it. The pattern was nothing new. Growing up, Laura had always been the charming one, able to talk her way into, or out of, anything. When she maxed out her first credit card at 19, my parents paid it off. When she dropped out of college after 3 expensive semesters, they called it finding her path. Every financial disaster was met with support, understanding, and usually a check. I'd taken a different route, working through college, building my graphic design career from internships up, saving carefully. My parents called me the responsible one, but the way they said it made it sound boring, like being good with money was somehow less impressive than Laura's endless string of exciting mistakes. That evening, I pulled up my bank statements, looking at the sharp drop in my savings from a year ago. I'd had almost $60,000 saved, enough for a decent down payment in our area. Now, thanks to Laura, I was back to renting a small apartment while watching my sister cruise around in a luxury car. My phone buzzed with a text from my mom. Laura just showed us her new car. Isn't it gorgeous? She said she got an amazing deal. Of course she had. Laura always got amazing deals that somehow left her broke. I thought about telling my mom about the unpaid loan, but I already knew how that conversation would go. She's going through a rough time, my mom would say. You know how hard things have been for her since the divorce. Laura's divorce had been 3 years ago, but it was still her get-out-of-responsibility-free card. Never mind that her ex-husband had left her with a paid-off house and a generous settlement. Somehow she'd burned through all of it while maintaining her expensive lifestyle. I opened my email, finding Laura's desperate message from a year ago. I promise I'll pay you back in 6 months tops. You're my only hope, Rachel. I could lose everything. I know it's a lot to ask, but you've always been so good with money. Please help me. I'll never forget this. Below that were months of follow-up emails, each with a different excuse for why she couldn't start repaying me yet. Car repairs. property taxes, a leaky roof. Yet somehow she'd had money for regular salon visits, weekend trips, and now a brand new Mercedes. My computer pinged with a new email, Laura sending photos of her car to the whole family. "New beginnings," she wrote. "Sometimes you have to invest in yourself." Invest in yourself. With my money. Money that was supposed to be investing in my future, in my dreams of home ownership. I closed my laptop, my hands shaking with anger. This wasn't just about the money anymore. It was about respect, about family, about being taken for granted. The next day I started gathering evidence. Every email, every text message, every bank transfer, I documented it all. My graphic design training came in handy as I created a detailed timeline of Laura's promises and excuses. The pattern was almost laughable. Urgent pleas for help followed by months of evasion, sprinkled with casual mentions of her latest splurges. I even found the napkin where she'd scribbled her repayment plan that day in my kitchen. 6 months tops, she'd written, complete with monthly payment amounts she'd never made. I'd kept it, thinking it might matter later. Now it sat in my growing file of broken promises. My phone buzzed with another text from Laura. "Hey sis, some friends are planning a spa weekend next month. You should come. We could do a payment plan for your share." I stared at the message in disbelief. She was inviting me to spend money on a spa weekend while sitting on $45,000 of my savings. The sheer audacity of it made my blood boil. That evening, my cousin Jenny called. "I saw Laura's new car on Instagram," she said cautiously. "Isn't that the same sister who borrowed your house down payment?" "The very same," I replied. "Rachel," Jenny's voice turned serious. "You need to do something. This isn't okay. My husband's a lawyer. He keeps saying you should have gotten something in writing." She was right, of course. I'd trusted family instead of protecting myself, but it wasn't too late to fix that mistake. "You know what will happen," Jenny warned. "The whole family will say you're being harsh. They'll tell you to be understanding because she's going through a hard time." "She's been going through a hard time since high school," I said. "Meanwhile, I'm the one living in a one-bedroom apartment because my savings are sitting in her driveway." After hanging up, I opened my laptop and started researching small claims court procedures. The maximum claim amount in our state would cover most of what Laura owed me. I also found templates for formal demand letters, the first step in legal proceedings. My hands shook as I typed Laura's name into the template. This would change everything. No more family dinners pretending everything was fine. No more playing the understanding sister while watching Laura spend my money. No more being the family ATM. But as I looked around my small apartment, at the life I'd put on hold to help her, I felt my resolve strengthen. Laura had chosen her priorities when she bought that Mercedes. Now it was time for me to choose mine. I sent the demand letter by certified mail, keeping the receipt as another piece of evidence. 3 days later, Laura burst into my apartment unannounced, waving the letter. "Are you serious with this legal garbage?" she shouted. "I'm your sister. You can't sue your own sister." I kept my voice steady. "You've had a year to handle this like sisters. Now we're handling it like adults who made a financial agreement." "I can't believe you're being so cold about money. It's just money. Family is more important." She collapsed onto my couch, already starting the waterworks that had worked so well last time. "Yes, family is important," I agreed. "So important that I gave you my house down payment when you needed help. So important that I trusted you to keep your word. How's that working out?" "You know I've been struggling." "Not too much struggle for a new Mercedes," I cut in. "Or those designer boots you're wearing. Or that European vacation you're planning." Laura's tears dried up instantly, replaced by anger. "You're just jealous because I know how to enjoy life while you pinch pennies and obsess over spreadsheets." "No, I'm angry because you took advantage of me. Because you promised to repay me and instead spent my money on luxury cars and spa weekends." "Fine." She stood up, grabbing her designer purse. "Take me to court. See how Mom and Dad feel about that. They already think you're too materialistic, always talking about saving and investments." "You mean being responsible?" "Yeah, how terrible of me." As she stormed out, my phone lit up with texts from our parents. Laura had obviously called them immediately. Mom, why are you threatening your sister? She's family. Dad, let's talk about this. No need for lawyers. I took a deep breath and typed out a group message. Laura borrowed $45,000 a year ago, promising to repay it in 6 months. Yesterday, she bought a new Mercedes instead of paying me back. I'm done being taken advantage of. The responses came quickly. Mom, she needed that car for work. Dad, maybe we can work out a payment plan. Laura, I can't believe you're telling everyone about this. Private family matters should stay private. I laughed out loud at that last one. Private family matters. Like the Mercedes she'd plastered all over social media? Like the European vacation she'd been bragging about? Private or public, the money is still owed, I replied. You have 30 days to respond to the demand letter. After that, I'm filing in small claims court. The next family dinner was a battlefield. My mom had insisted we all come over to work things out as a family, but it was clear whose side she was on. She'd even made Laura's favorite meal, as if pasta would somehow make me forget about $45,000. I just don't understand why you're being so aggressive about this, my mom said, passing the garlic bread. Laura's going through... If you say a rough time one more time, I'm leaving, I interrupted. She's been going through a rough time for 15 years. Meanwhile, she's driving a car that costs more than what she owes me. That's different, Laura protested. The car is an investment in my career. I need to project success. You know what projects success? I pulled out my folder of documents. Paying your debts, being trustworthy, not stealing your sister's house down payment. Stealing? Laura gasped. I borrowed it. You agreed. You borrowed it with specific promises that you broke. That's called fraud. My dad, who'd been quietly eating his pasta, finally spoke up. Maybe we could help. Your mother and I could contribute something. No. I set down my fork. This isn't about the family helping Laura out of another mess. This is about Laura facing consequences for once in her life. But we're family, my mom insisted. Family helps each other. Really? Where was this family helps each other philosophy when I needed a roommate after college? Laura had that big empty house, but you said I needed to learn independence. Laura rolled her eyes. That was different. Yes, it was different. Because it was me needing help instead of you. Everything's different when it's me. So, you've always been so good at handling things on your own, my mom started. That's not a punishment, Mom. Being responsible shouldn't mean I'm less deserving of consideration, of respect, of having my sister keep her word. The silence that followed was deafening. My mom looked close to tears. My dad studied his plate, and Laura just looked angry, like I was the one who had betrayed her. I'm filing in small claims court next week, I said, standing up. You can either start taking this seriously, or you can explain to a judge why you bought a luxury car instead of repaying your debt. If you do this, Laura warned, it will change everything. I looked at my sister, really looked at her. The designer clothes, the perfectly manicured nails, the entitled attitude that our family had carefully nurtured for years. Everything already changed, I replied. It changed the day you decided your Mercedes was more important than your word. True to her word, Laura rallied the extended family against me. Aunts called to tell me I was being unreasonable. Cousins sent messages about family loyalty. Even my grandmother weighed in, saying she was disappointed in my choices. I saved all their messages in my legal file. Each one proved how Laura had weaponized the family against me, turning my attempt to get repaid into an act of betrayal. Only Cousin Jenny stood by me, sending daily texts of support and updates from her lawyer husband about what to expect in court. A week before the court date, my parents made one last attempt at intervention. They invited me over, and I found Laura there too, sitting at the kitchen table like we were kids about to be disciplined. We have a proposal, my dad said, pulling out his checkbook. We'll pay half of what Laura owes you. You can drop the court case, and we can put this whole ugly business behind us. That's very generous of you, I replied. But no, this isn't about you fixing Laura's mess again. It's about Laura facing consequences. I could lose my car, Laura burst out. They might repossess it if I have to pay you back all at once. You should have thought about that before buying it with my money. It wasn't your money anymore. I borrowed it. That's not how loans work, Laura. You don't just get to decide you're keeping it. My mom started crying. Please, Rachel. This is tearing our family apart. No, Mom. Laura's actions tore this family apart. I'm just refusing to pretend it didn't happen. But she's your sister, my dad tried again. Yes, she is. And as my sister, she should have respected me enough to keep her word. To not buy luxury cars while owing me money. To not treat me like a bank that doesn't need to be repaid. Laura stood up suddenly. Fine. You want to destroy this family over money? Go ahead. But don't expect me to ever forgive you. I watched her storm out, remembering all the times I'd seen this same performance. The dramatic exits, the tears, the guilt trips. They'd always worked before. The family would rush to soothe Laura, to fix things for Laura, to make excuses for Laura. Not this time. I'll see you in court, I called after her. Then I turned to my parents. And if you try to pay her debt for her, I'll name you as co-defendants for attempting to obstruct justice. My dad's face went pale. My mom's tears stopped abruptly. For the first time, they looked at me not as the reliable daughter they could take for granted, but as someone capable of standing her ground. The morning of court, I arrived early, dressed in my most professional outfit and carrying my carefully organized file of evidence. Jenny came with me for support, while her husband had helped me prepare my presentation to the judge. Laura showed up late, of course. She breezed in, wearing designer clothes and carrying a new handbag that probably cost more than my monthly rent. Our parents sat behind her, looking uncomfortable in the small claims courtroom. The judge was a no-nonsense woman in her 60s who listened carefully as I presented my evidence: the original bank transfer, Laura's written promises, the timeline of excuses, and photos of her recent purchases, including the Mercedes. When it was Laura's turn to speak, she tried her usual tactics. She cried. She talked about family loyalty. She mentioned her divorce from 3 years ago. She explained how the car was a necessity for her real estate career. The judge wasn't moved. Ms. Sullivan, she addressed Laura, are you telling me you purchased a luxury vehicle while owing your sister $45,000? It's just a lease, Laura protested, and I needed it for work. That's not what I asked. Did you buy a new car instead of repaying your sister? Well, yes, but... And these vacation photos posted on your social media last month? Was this trip necessary for work as well? Laura shifted uncomfortably. No, but... Miss Sullivan, this court takes a very dim view of individuals who demonstrate such blatant disregard for their financial obligations. Your sister provided substantial evidence of both the loan and your ability to repay it, had you chosen to do so. I watched Laura's face as she realized her usual manipulations weren't working. The judge wasn't family. She couldn't be swayed by tears or guilt trips or claims of hard times. Furthermore, the judge continued, your social media posts suggest a pattern of frivolous spending while actively avoiding your debt. This court finds in favor of the plaintiff. You are ordered to repay the full amount of $45,000 within 90 days. 90 days? Laura gasped. That's impossible. I don't have that kind of money. Perhaps you should consider selling your new car, the judge suggested dryly. Next case. In the hallway afterward, Laura lunged at me. Happy now? You've ruined everything. You ruined it, I replied calmly. You ruined it when you decided your luxury lifestyle was more important than your integrity. My parents hovered nearby, looking lost. They'd never seen Laura face real consequences before. They'd never seen me stand up to her like this. We could help with the payments, my dad started to offer. Don't you dare, I cut him off. She got herself into this mess with her choices. She can get herself out the same way. As I walked out of the courthouse with Jenny, I felt lighter than I had in months. The money mattered, yes, but this was about more than that. It was about standing up for myself, about refusing to be taken advantage of, about finally breaking the family pattern of enabling Laura's behavior. The aftermath of the court case rippled through our family like a tidal wave. Laura had to surrender her Mercedes to pay part of her debt to me. She posted dramatic social media updates about betrayal and the price of trusting family, but notably turned off the comments when people started asking questions about what actually happened. My parents struggled to adjust to the new family dynamic. My mom kept trying to play peacemaker, inviting us both to dinner as if nothing had happened. When I declined, she switched to calling me daily with updates about how difficult things were for Laura. She had to cancel her Europe trip, my mom said one evening, and she's looking for a smaller apartment. Don't you think that's punishment enough? That's not punishment, Mom. That's living within her means like everyone else has to do. But she's so embarrassed at work, having to drive her old car again. You mean the perfectly good 3-year-old Audi she had before? The horror. After the first month, Laura had repaid about half of what she owed me, mostly from selling her new car and some designer items. She made sure everyone knew about each payment, acting like she was donating a kidney instead of returning borrowed money. Then came the family reunion. Our aunt hosted it every year, and this time I decided to go. I wasn't going to let Laura's drama keep me from family traditions. When I arrived, the whispers started immediately. Some relatives avoided me completely. Others cornered me to share their opinions about how I should have handled things more privately. But something unexpected happened too. My younger cousins started asking me for financial advice. My Aunt Susan quietly mentioned that my stand had given her the courage to stop lending money to her gambling-addicted son. Even my Uncle George, who'd initially criticized me for going to court, admitted that his own daughter had started repaying a loan after hearing about Laura's case. Sometimes family needs tough love, he said, patting my shoulder. Took me too long to learn that lesson myself. The real surprise came from my dad. He pulled me aside during the reunion, looking uncomfortable but determined. I've been thinking, he said. Your mother and I, we didn't do Laura any favors over the years, or you for that matter. We expected too little from her and too much from you. Dad? No, let me finish. Watching you stand your ground, even when everyone was against you, it made me realize how much we've enabled her behavior, and how unfair we've been to you. He pulled out an envelope. This isn't to pay her debt. This is different. Your mother and I, we helped Laura with a down payment when she bought her house. We should have done the same for you. It's not the full amount, but it's a start. I looked at the check. It was for $25,000. Not just money, but acknowledgement, recognition, respect. Thanks, Dad, I said, blinking back tears. This means a lot. 6 months after the court case, Laura finally made the last payment. She transferred the money without a word, but posted a vague social media message about closing difficult chapters and moving forward. Our mutual friends told me she'd started seeing a financial advisor and was actually sticking to a budget for the first time in her life. My mom still struggled with the change in our family dynamic. She kept trying to orchestrate reconciliation opportunities, unable to accept that sometimes relationships need to stay broken to heal properly. But my dad had become an unexpected ally, shutting down her attempts to guilt me into making peace. The money went straight into my house fund, and with my dad's additional help, I finally had enough for a down payment. The day I closed on my new home, I thought about how different everything was from a year ago. I'd lost the easy relationship with my sister, the blind support of some family members, the role of reliable peacekeeper I'd played for so long. But I'd gained something more valuable, self-respect, the knowledge that I could stand up for myself, even when it was difficult, even when it hurt, even when everyone expected me to give in, like always. Jenny helped me move into my new place, and as we unpacked boxes, she handed me a framed quote she'd designed herself, putting her own graphic design skills to work. It read, "Sometimes the highest price of peace is your self-respect." I hung it in my home office, a reminder of lessons learned and boundaries earned. At my housewarming party, I watched my transformed family dynamics play out in real time. Laura didn't come, but she'd sent a card, store-bought, with a simple congratulations and her signature. No fake sentiments, no dramatic statements, just acknowledgement from a safe distance. My parents came early to help set up. My mom still looked sad when she mentioned Laura's absence, but she didn't push the issue. My dad took me aside to show me a spreadsheet he'd made to track his own expenses. He'd finally started managing the family finances instead of letting them spiral out of control. Cousin Jenny brought her famous lasagna and a bottle of champagne. "To new beginnings," she said, "and to standing your ground." Other relatives who'd initially criticized me now asked about my experience buying a home, some even admitting they wished they'd been stricter with their own family lending. The house wasn't as luxurious as the one I might have bought a year ago, before Laura's loan drained my savings. But it was mine, earned through hard work and protected by newfound strength. Each room represented not just my financial investment, but my investment in myself. Later that evening, I found a quiet moment to sit on my new back porch, listening to the happy chatter from inside. A year ago, I'd been the family peacekeeper, the reliable one who would sacrifice anything to keep everyone happy. Now I was something else, something stronger, clearer, more defined. Sometimes family bonds have to break to reset properly. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is hold someone accountable. And sometimes losing what you thought you needed helps you find what you actually deserve.